Welcome to the video. At the end of the first video in this series on procurement strategy, I suggested I was going to cover how to create a performance management and continuous improvement culture. Well, I am going to cover that, but not in this video. I'm going to cover it fairly shortly. In this video, I'm going to talk about some of the general challenges that are faced by procurement. But before I do that, just want to kind of just restate a little bit about what this journey is gonna look like as we go from some context stuff into thinking about what are the best ways of developing a procurement strategy that's going to work, right the way through to how are we effectively going to implement the strategy. So the first part of this journey is going to be, as I suggested, around context and leadership and improvement culture. Then I'm going to move on to how do we raise aspirations? So how do we go beyond just managing into something far more transformational in terms of leading our procurement functions and taking them to a much more dramatically different place than we might otherwise have intended. And then I'm going to move into using systems thinking in terms of using systems thinking to develop procurement strategy. And then the final piece of this journey will be around how do we ensure we take account of the change management challenges and work to effectively implement our procurement strategy. So that's kind of what the journey is going to look like. But today on this video, I just want to focus in on some of the typical procurement challenges that we face. The first one is the need to drive down costs, sometimes urgently. Now, there'll be a lot of younger professionals out there who didn't live through the financial crash of 2008, but many of us did. And one of the characteristics of that period was that, often initiated by government procurement in the UK, there was a renegotiating and a rewriting of some contracts, or many contracts, because there was an urgent need to try and mitigate the damage that was being caused by the financial crisis. So effectively, powerful procurement operators were pressing down on suppliers to revisit contract conditions and prices and rates in order to drive savings. And it was a matter of survival for many organizations, not least the suppliers themselves. But that is a constant theme. And right now in 2023, we're facing an emerging banking crisis. We've got high levels of inflation. That doesn't seem to be going away, despite what some of the politicians are telling us. So the pressure to reduce costs is intense right now, just like it was back in 2008 and 2009. The second challenge is the need to build procurement's reputation within the business with amongst stakeholders. And that goes with the challenge of aligning procurement activities to the needs of stakeholders as best we can. Because we don't operate in a vacuum. We don't have this luxury of coming in from maybe outside and saying, here's a blueprint for excellence in procurement. This is what we're going to bulldoze our way through the organization with, and everybody else is just going to have to get on board. Life's not like that. So we have to work much more collaboratively with our stakeholders, and part of that is about curating procurement's reputation. And part of that will be about delivering results, but also will be a kind of a good bedside manner, a good internal consultant, trusted advisor type relationship or relationships with the range of stakeholders in our organizations. We need to design and deploy appropriate strategies and the measures of performance around governing those strategies, governing the effective implementation of those strategies. And I think there's a lot of experience that I've picked up over the years where, and I talked about this with the procurement iceberg in the first video in this series, was that there is an issue of almost like a shopping list of things that procurement people are actively involved with and are attempting to improve on a best endeavors basis, but it doesn't. These long list of different initiatives don't necessarily coalesce in a very well structured strategy that becomes the blueprint for how procurement is going to operate and then deliver results to the business that it's involved with. The need to improve skills and leadership capability. One of the great things about working in procurement, as many of you will know, is that from a very early age, and maybe procurement is unique in many of the professions, but in the early days of a procurement career, although you might have low status and not much of a CV behind you, very quickly you are engaging with and indeed negotiating with people from outside the organization who are of high status. Managing directors, chief executives, senior sales professionals within supplying organizations. And it's one of those things where it is a steep learning curve in terms of negotiation skills and how to engage with people from outside the organization. But it pays off in spades. So usually by the mid-20s, procurement people are very, very competent in negotiating deals and are not fazed at all by however how much seniority their negotiating partner or adversary is has associated with themselves. So everybody needs to develop skills and the ability to lead. And just one little thing about that leadership. I'm loath to use the phrase best practice because probably world-class practice is probably better. But world-class practice is in procurement and when we think about category management, it is effectively a cross-functional endeavor. And procurement people are very well placed and need to be skilled to lead cross-functional teams in development of strategies and negotiation planning sessions and so on and so forth. So developing procurement leadership is essential. There's the need to become ever more customer focused. Now, I alluded to this in the engagement with stakeholders, but if in procurement we want to not have a reputation for excellence within our organizations, then part of that is ensuring that we know how to most effectively engage with people around the business. We need to maintain morale in the face of stretched targets. Most of you will know the category planning process, where every year, as part of the budgeting cycle, we'll be looking at all of the potential opportunities to make savings or other value improvements or mitigate expected increases. And all of that goes into the budgeting hopper, and we got a pretty good idea about what we're able to deliver. And we take that to the Chief Finance Officer very often, and the Chief Finance Officer turns around and says, that's great, good work, really like this. I'm going to add 2% to it and we'll call it a stretch target. And that is sometimes very dispiriting for procurement people who've put their heart and soul in trying to analyze what the opportunities might be. So we have to kind of work with our people to ensure that they remain focused and optimistic about achieving those goals and those targets. And also, when we think about looking outside the organization, given that typically an organization spends 70% of its money in the supply chain, we need to be very, very effective in continually driving value improvement from suppliers. None of this happens by accident. Suppliers don't roll up at on the doorstep offering savings just like that. We have to go searching for them. We have to mine for them. We have to negotiate them. We have to bring them home. So those are, and let me just say, none of this is easy, as we know, but it's essential. And there's no point in being blind to the notion that procurement's an easy job, because it really isn't an easy job. And these challenges have been facing procurement organizations for a very long time. So that's all I want to say on some of the challenges. Be interested to hear from anybody who watches this video about what other challenges you're facing, and indeed how you're managing to to balance those challenges, because not all of them can be delivered all of the time, at least not effectively. So by all means, please comment on LinkedIn or please comment under the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.